content over everything.
This is Terry Riggs, Mr. Riggs, and you know who it is. And we are on content over everything. The man behind the scenes. He's filming us today. We're not in Speaker's Corner, by the way. We're at Manhood Academy. We're talking about raising and looking after our youth and bringing the new generation to holding our legacy. Now we've got one of the big top guns in the house. As you know, you've seen him before. And there's only one name we can say. Dean Okai. How are you doing today, bro?
I'm blessed. And it charges my batteries just to see the young men getting their graduation.
Yeah. So what's been happening lately? Because, you know, I'm just looking at in the perspective of looking at what's happening today in the kind of our youth programs and what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And as I heard you mention, I want some people to know about that program that you said you're developing or you're actually doing into how can we incorporate that with the Manhood Academy?
Very simple. So me and Nana at Access UK have developed the Road CEO, which is deliver business acumen to our young men. Mm-hmm. Our young men and young women. So in the respective Womanhood Academy, we come down to do a taster session as well. Uh-huh. And once they demystify all of the things involved in running a business, and they learn that these are transferable skills, and they get these in the system from young, they become secondary. So in the 4 processes of learning, they're an unconscious, they don't know what they don't know. You become a conscious unconscious, where they start to get a clue about what they don't know. Then they become a conscious, so now they become functional. And we hope over a number of sessions we get into that stage. But as we say, with the 10,000 hours of mastery over a couple of years, it becomes very secondary. And then they become, it's just like breathing. In that second nature. And that's what we want in our young people from the age of 15 or 16. Mm-hmm. So that when it comes to actually becoming the employers of the future, and that's the only way that we're going to increase our employability. Because we face exactly the same hurdles in 2020 that we faced in 1954. So nothing has changed, really.
Okay. Yeah, because I want to ask, because you know a lot of people out here, right? They don't really get to understand what the rites of passage. Mm-hmm. And because I've come from that schooling of rites of passage in the format of, let me put it into, it's supposed to be like 5 formats, but I'm going to try and bring it a bit shorter in the fact that the first hurdle, which is our youth part, which is to learn about our community or learn about our environment. The second protocol is to master our environment or learn our community. Then the next one I would say is in forms of teaching our community of what we've mastered. And then the last one is that form of dissension, of going to the ancestral realm in that perspective. Now, in my understanding that each of these parts takes 20 years.
Yeah.
So really and truly, a lot of people, before you can be fully fledged, you're probably going to be in your 80s. Now, in looking at the perspective of how things are today, in forms of understanding the community, understanding our environment, how do you see the system affects our children today in what you do?
Well, just to go back to the 4 principles that you spoke about, within those 20 years, that will be if we learned ourselves. Mm. So we have this common saying, I went to the University of Life. Forget about that. When we have teachers, they will give us the short form based on their experience. We don't have to go and acquire these experiences ourselves. And when we say it, it's because we've been thrown into the jungle. You leave home at 18 because you're a so-called adult. You've got no guiding principles, and you find yourself in the Lord of the Flies. This is the whole point of a Manhood Academy, because you're prepping young men for life. And in every single area of their life, they're going to be introduced to the solution makers that are going to advance them past those learning curves that they need to experience themselves. If you were going to test a rocket, you wouldn't put people in the rockets and then fire them into the air.
No.
You put a dummy in there. And then if it crashes and explodes, no problem, because it was a crash dummy. But people aren't crash dummies. So these things have already been tried and tested. Now we're just giving them the methods that we know are successful. That's a science. So Manhood Academy is a science to bring young men, unguided, into manhood so that they're functional members of their community. And what we want to do is connect the dots which is why we would like to dovetail a road CEO into organizations like Manhood Academy and be able to deliver that across the board, across London. So we want to see Manhood Academy as a standard in North, East, West,
Worldwide.
South, and Central London, and then across the country and across the globe. And you've already made those global connections.
Yeah, because the one thing that we did an Amsterdam exchange where we took the kids to Amsterdam and brought the kids from Amsterdam over into the UK.
Yeah.
But I always say for us to do it internally into showing the experience that we do exchanges within London itself. So if we have North, West, South, East, we're able to doing these exchanges with different programs. Then we take it to doing exchanges with Birmingham.
Yep.
And then doing exchanges with other people until we come out to the broad of the United States and France, even Africa.
Absolutely.
But the thing I wanted to emphasize is that when they get to a certain age, is for them to experience a one-off trip for them to go into Africa. And that's where, like, as you know, Queen Diambi and able to bring it to her to able to give in our children the rites of passage, because this is what kind of gels or bonds our children in that perspective. But I want to see in what you do and how you've grown yourself. What kind of thing can you say was your rites of passage coming up?
I was a crash test dummy. So our young men don't need to be crash test dummies anymore, because idiots like me and our peers have already done that. So when you talk about the principles of greatness are demonstrated. We don't need to speak on them. So when you talk about those exchanges between boroughs, those are principles of greatness that we demonstrate. So how can you have postcodes and how can that have any significance when you've got young men that are skipping postcodes, enjoying each other, knowing that they have great relationships, and seeing that that doesn't mean anything? And you mentioned a great Queen Diambi. So when you understand that there is a diaspora region and that is getting stronger and stronger in its infrastructure and broader in its scope, and that we are African diasporans, now when you start to solidify those exchanges, they become very frequent and very powerful. So I don't want to see a one-way trip for our young men and women to go to the continent. We want to see those, like the young man that was here today, that's contributed year on year. You want to see the alumni of graduates come back and contribute year on year. And the more they grow in their lives, when they can make the financial contributions, it's not just time, it's financial, it's spiritual, it's intellectual, and that all comes back into building a community that becomes a stronger and more powerful alumni that grows. So because we're aware now, based on the crash test dummies who went out there and went to the University of Life, we just want to plug all of that intellectual capital and the experiences back in to circumvent the learning curves for young men.
Okay, so how do you feel today on the award that you've received, and how did you find the event today?
I was very proud to receive the award and humbled. I didn't know who the hell you were talking about. And it fills my battery to continue doing the work. But very importantly, with Access UK, my brother's not here, he's in Ghana at the moment, and even seeking to grow Access UK within the Ghana educational infrastructures and employment there. It's about learning from the mistakes that we've made, and everything has been about fitting in and not acknowledging our greatness. So the whole thing about Road CEO is to take these young men who, for whatever reasons, are finding themselves in front of McDonald's and Subway with spare time, and bringing them into an indoor environment where they're engaged and they're learning real tangible skills that are going to earn them money and grow who they are and their acumen in the world. So 2020 for me is about aligning with organizations like you, because you're already attracting the people that we want to speak to, and then giving them the intellectual capital that we've gained over this time in a very formal setting, so that they know this is duplicatable and is scalable, and we can do this throughout the ages as well.
If there was something you wanted to say to the parents out there, what would you say to them about Manhood Academy?
The greatest thing you can do is make the investment in your young men by bringing them in a system which is going to give them a cultural understanding of themselves, that is going to give them a confidence that we didn't necessarily have in schools. So we would play up. Now, if somebody attacks you in a school, or let's bring it right back to the first and most basic attack. So on a careers day, I went to my careers teacher, who was just a geography teacher. He's not a career specialist. And I wanted to be a film producer. And I said I wanted to be a BBC cameraman. And he said, that's not realistic for you. He was not qualified. He'd spent no time with me. He didn't know what my acumen around the film industry was. And I find that these conscious or unconscious biases have affected us to such a deep root that in order to circumvent them, come into organizations like Manhood Academy, give them the confidence that you could look at that teacher and respectfully say, because I'll tell you what my answer was in 30 seconds, and it wasn't so respectful, that you're not qualified to make that assessment of me. And it's only a courtesy that I'm letting you know what my career aspirations are, but I've got a wider support network that are enabling me within that. So what I said to the teacher was, you're going on strike next week because you don't earn enough money. My mum said she wouldn't get out of bed for your money. You can't tell me what I can and can't do. And he threw me out of the room. So as a crash test dummy, it's for me and all of our peers to give back to these young men that they don't have to learn via their experiences. We've gone through that.
All right, this is content over everything. But by the way, Black Eyes TV7 as well. Tune in, make sure, and you tune into both of them. Even if you've got two screens, you can put both of them on. But Dean, if people wanted to find you, how would they find you?
Dean, Okai, AI, Senior, SNR, at all the handles. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube.
And I've got to say, buy black at Direct Suits.
What Suits Direct even?
Oh, Suits Direct. And if you don't spend, then there's something going on. So you need to get in that shop, buy a pair of shoes, a suit, and go and get a job.
It's not by force, though.
It's not by force. Peace, love, and harmony.
Content over everything. From Young Adulthood.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
It's best that we ask the lady in question, you know, she's got a certificate. Tell everyone why we've gifted you this acknowledgement, and then we can go from there.
Oh, I got the mic to myself, nice. Me and two other members that are here today, we started an events business called Escapism. It's an all-day party that we put on every year, and basically Adidas themed, not sponsored by Adidas, but it's just a theme that we came up with. So basically one day I was on Instagram and Manhood Academy probably came up on my feed, and I just checked you guys out, and I just love the way, you know, you brought the young children together and what you teach them.